So, are England as bad as everyone thinks at the moment?
Well, I think on the basis of what we saw in the Six Nations, they weren't
Yeah.
great. They played well in patches. I think they played well in patches even against Wales.
Hmm.
There were some good bits of play. They played pretty well against France, although I think we went way over the top because we'd been not particularly
Yeah.
good, particularly against Scotland, and all those penalties we gave away against Wales, which certainly lost us the match in the last 15, 20 minutes.
Hmm.
Italy, we were okay. I think Ireland was really poor.
Yeah.
The Scotland game was still close. It was only 5
Yeah.
points difference. Wales ran away at the end. I think their last try really came because we were trying to push the match as we had to. We'd lost it at
Hmm.
that point because of those three kickable penalties. But
Yeah.
Ireland, we never looked like we were
Yeah.
vaguely in the match to me.
Ireland just looked like they wanted it more.
I think that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Was that your impression? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think also with like CJ Stander's retirement, they wanted kind of a big occasion for him because there was no fans.
Yeah.
And also Andy Farrell hasn't had a great time under Ireland recently, and I think he had more of a point to prove than England,
Yeah,
probably.
I think there's lots of truths in there. I mean, we don't know about CJ Stander, but I suspect he was
Yeah.
very highly regarded and respected,
Yeah.
and is.
Hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised to see him reappear in some sort of coaching role in the future.
Yeah.
But you can understand why he wanted to go back to South Africa to be with his family and so on.
Hmm.
And so there was an emotional aspect to that. Yeah. Also, Ireland hadn't played that well, I don't think, in the Six Nations. They'd had
Yeah.
individual players who played well, but I don't think they played very well as a team. And I think that was their game against England was almost like England's game against France. The
Yeah.
the defining performance.
I think with Ireland, they've not necessarily played badly. Their defence has been really good, especially against France,
Yeah.
like keeping France quiet. But
Mm.
I think they just needed something a bit more in attack, and it started to come through during the England game.
Yeah, and certainly Mike Catt, the attack coach for Ireland, was under some
Hmm.
pressure as well because they hadn't created
Yeah.
very much, and England were on the receiving end of that. Um,
Yeah.
so we're almost analysing the Six Nations as a whole now
Yeah.
for the teams, but just on England, I do think there's been a massive overreaction.
Mhm.
We're hearing, this England turn up, one outstanding performance per season. So people are saying, in the World Cup it was the New Zealand match, and England were outstanding and could and should have won by more. But
Yeah.
they forget that we were superb against Argentina, who
Hmm.
less than 12 months later beat New Zealand in New Zealand with
Yeah.
pretty much the same side. We were superb against Australia. We were
Hmm.
superb against New Zealand. Unfortunately, we didn't turn up in the final, but that's a very
Yeah.
hard run. Argentina,
Argentina. Yeah.
Australia, New Zealand. Three
Uh,
consecutive matches. And France would have been in there if that game hadn't been
yeah.
cancelled because of the typhoon. And then South Africa in the final. So I'm not making excuses. We didn't turn up in the final, but we played
Yeah.
three outstanding games.
We're probably just knackered by the
I think
end.
we probably were. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's an element of that. I mean, people will say if you can't get up, motivate yourself for a
Yeah.
fight, you shouldn't be there. And South Africa looked very hard at how we'd been playing, and
Mm.
actually, in a way, the way we play the game is the way South Africa play the game, and they do it a little bit
Yeah.
better than us. That
Yeah.
very, very hard, defensive, um, aggressive style of play suits them very well too,
Mm.
and they're very, very good. So, yeah, so that was. Three outstanding games we played in the World Cup. And then in 2020, we didn't look great all year, but we did actually win the Six Nations, and we did
Yeah.
actually win the Autumn Nations Cup, although I think, the way we are now, that France match, when we were pretty much playing a France third team, we were
Yeah.
awful. We
Yeah.
were absolutely awful.
I know. But we just the difference is we somehow managed to win.
Yeah.
Whereas that wasn't really the case, like against Scotland and Wales, we just did the opposite. just conceded loads of penalties because of the pressure, and
I think
instead
that
of
was a big shock, wasn't it? How we suddenly lacked this streetwise play that we'd had, finding a way to win games, and then suddenly we couldn't win those games.
yeah,
The Ireland match, we in the beginning of the second half, we gave away 8 penalties in 31 minutes at the beginning of the second half. 8
yeah,
penalties in 31 minutes. That's an unbelievable number of penalties. And we'll come on to the players, I'm sure, the individual, what changes
yeah,
can we see happening? But that's a ridiculous number of penalties. And of course, which game was it where Wales, those 3 penalties in
yeah.
the last sort of 10 or 15 minutes that they kicked, and Biggar kicked a lot.
And even Scotland, you could just tell from the first 20 minutes we conceded.
How many was it?
I can't remember how
7,
many it was.
wasn't it? It was
Yeah.
they were coming at 1 a minute almost.
Yeah.
3 in the first 4 minutes, was that
something like that? Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just absolutely, why is that? Maybe we're not playing referees very well. And certainly, that last match with the scrum, the match against Ireland, with our scrummage not going well, being penalised. Was it 2 free kicks and 2 penalties against Vunipola? We didn't seem to be very wise about playing the referee. If you're giving away penalties, then just stop competing at the scrum. It's just a waste of time. And they were in attacking positions, weren't they? So certainly 2 of them were, I think.